appreciate you out there on the Odd Shopper channel. We're back. We hit the NFL. Well, we didn't hit, but we opened up the Thursday night same game parlay. So we're going to have that Thursday night, the same game parlay in the NFL for Monday night. That means baseball is Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. So we'll hit the parlay, the same game parlay, and then we supersize the shit out of this sucker. That's what we do here on the MLB Parlay video. You out there, you really just need to do two things, right? Just hang with me and comment, chat away, whatever you like, whatever you hate, whatever you love, that's fine. And also subscribe. We're over 18K, probably close to 19K by the time you watch this thing. It's amazing. Congratulations to everybody involved, both community and people, man. We also, speaking of the Odd Shopper channel, are debuting Friday, 1 o'clock. That's today as I'm recording this Eastern, a brand new live betting show. Rasa, Laffy, and Shander. Oof, how about a combo right there? So I'm excited. Every Friday we'll do live stuff. So it's a community-based show, meaning we expect you to be there. You can also take advantage of some insider stuff on our Discord, especially my package here. You see the information below. We do a lot of fun stuff, outside of the box stuff that we try to nail on a weekly basis, including a Coach of the Year play that's up there in the NFL and an upset in college football. Let's just focus on baseball for now. How about that, right? I think that's probably the easiest way to go, and I think the start for us is going to be Lance McCullers, all right? McCullers at home against an Angels team. I'm not worried about how well the Angels are playing or not. It's inconsequential to me, whatever LA is doing, good or bad. The only thing I know that I can count on routinely, game in and game out, is that the Angels as a whole are a walking, living, breathing strikeout. And if there's a pitcher who can take advantage of that, I want in, right? Just to quote Christopher Walken back at King of New York, if you go back that far, a nickel bag gets sold in the park. I want in. Same thing here. Like, I want now anybody that is doing anything close to 6, 7, even 8, if I'm getting plus money back Ks for a prop bet. And in this case, it's over 6.5. I mean, it's just that simple here where we start. I think the Angels, again, are live here to at least have 7, 8 Ks in this game. McCullers is live to go deep. Lorenzen, look at that. Look at the difference there. I mean, granted, as far as the expected outing versus McCullers, but back, no concerns here at all about where he begins. So I'm rolling with this. That's the first play for us as we build this thing. Now, the next one is going to be a similar play, but the opposite end. And again, I just want to take advantage of teams that strike out or don't strike out. We're late in the season. It's about to be mid-September. NFL's here. College is already here. A lot of people are tuning out to some season-long stuff that really won't change much. And that's where we go here with this game, is the Guardians Twins. Now, you're not going to get a ton from Dylan Bundy in this outing. And the main thing about variance for a guy like Bundy in strikeouts is consistently, right? You're seeing him pitch poorly against better hitting teams, and consistently you're seeing him struggle to strike out better hitting teams. The Guardians don't K. We know they don't K. It's under 2.5 is our second leg here, because while Dylan Bundy, you think, well, 3 Ks, my God, I mean, that's an easy number, Shander. Most people starting or getting 3-4 innings should get you 3 Ks. But you go back and you look at some of the variants here against better hitting teams, or at the very least, teams that don't strike out. And Bundy can have 5-6 innings without a K. He's not somebody that just gets ushered in Ks and has had to work for it, but it's been against teams that strike out regularly. So this is a really good spot here. I understand that it's minus 150. We're adding it to the parlay. I'd play this straight up, right? That's the Raza rule of parlays, which is you should be playing each and every leg straight up, and then it makes sense from plus EV.
And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is finally Friday, September 9th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Terry McBride. We are brought to you by PrizePicks, and we have 12 games, I believe. That's off the top of my head. It's definitely double digits. It doesn't really matter if it's 10 or 15, but I'm pretty sure that it's 12. But either way, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Terry, what's going on?
Not too much, bud. It's been a lot less of a adventurous morning for me, I think, than it has been for you. Sounded like you had some issues getting back home from the gym. But yeah, I only had to migrate from my couch, which is like, I don't know, 14 feet in that direction. Get some coffee, and been sitting here for a little bit. So just kind of diving in, digging into this slate. Looks like an interesting one, but yeah, doing pretty good overall. Didn't lose too much money in football last night. Did you play any single game football?
I did. I came out positive last night. Nothing too crazy, but positive is a victory as far as I'm concerned and as far as most people are concerned. So, yeah, walked away from it to the good. I had Josh Allen in everything. I had Diggs in just about everything. I had Cup in just about everything. So by default, I had a pretty high bar. Just didn't have the pieces to put together. Didn't have enough defense, and that was necessary.
That was part of what killed me. And then I didn't have enough Cup, which is what really sank me. I had tons and tons of Allen. I had tons of Diggs. I had a lot of the right pieces, but I got to work on my single game sorter. I just kind of threw something together because I couldn't find the one I was using last year on my old computer. So it didn't quite work out exactly where I wanted, but c'est la vie.
That'll do it. That'll do it. Just making one last change to all the lineups that I generated this morning. And now we're going to be good to go. Yeah. So, I left the gym, which is about 5 miles from my house, at about 9:25. I got in the door 5 minutes ago. I don't know what was going on the roads. My wife is still stuck in the middle of all of it. She went a different way, and I believe she went the much worse way than I did. So hers is going to be even worse, but she didn't have to get home to do an MLB show.
Yeah,
and that's good for everybody because she doesn't know shit about baseball.
Yeah, that's a plus.
Yeah.
Do you guys gym together? Is that like a little thing that you guys do? You go in the mornings, or is she going from somewhere else?
So oddly enough, no, but we were in the same place. My gym also is a physical therapy place. So she's getting PT on her knee, and I just happen to be working out there as well. I've been there. The PT is new for her. So it just so happens we were in the same place.
Gotcha.
But
is that cramping your style around the gym, having the old ball and chain around, or?
Didn't even notice. I was too busy getting beat up by my trainer. So
gotcha. Right on.
You ready to dive into this bad boy?
Sure. Let's do it. We got an interesting one off the top.
We have a lot to talk about here. So let's just get into it now. I think that number adds up to 1,000. I hope it does. Anyway, let's dive into it and just for the record, we got to be out so everybody knows. And everybody is going to be a relative term today because now that football is here, everybody is a much lower everybody. We got to be out at 10:55. So we are going to move abruptly through shit that doesn't look very good. Yankees and Rays, first game up. Frankie Montas and Drew Rasmussen. Montas 15% owned. He is 9,700. Rasmussen not owned at 9,400. I don't generally like targeting against the Yankees either, but for me, I don't really want to have either one of these guys in any sort of volume just because I have respect for the opposite sides. I'm a little surprised, honestly, that Rasmussen isn't getting a little bit more love. I think these guys look a little bit more equal. I think the matchup looks a little bit more equal, but in the grand scheme of things, I'd rather just have different pitchers.
So I think the field might be a little bit behind the curve on Rasmussen. I agree with you. That ownership looks low to me. It's a fair price. 9,500 is around a league average pitcher, maybe a little bit better. 22.1% strikeout rate, nice little 3.51 xFIP, but even tighter 2.70 ERA, only a 2.14 home run rate. So he's pretty good at keeping the ball in the yard. Now, tell me if this is a similar or same projected lineup that you're looking at for the Yankees. Does yours include Aaron Hicks, Jose Trevino, Oswaldo Cabrera, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Marwin Gonzalez, and Oswald Peraza? Because
correct.
That is not a good lineup. That is not the Yankees that put up all the numbers that we're looking at in a lot of the statistics for the team for the year. The only two hitters to fear in that lineup are Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, and maybe a little bit of Gleyber Torres. So I think it's a good spot for Rasmussen. It's, Yankee Stadium, not a good hitter, not a good pitcher's park, all those different things. I think you can get overweight to him if you want to, but it's just going to be a personal decision kind of a thing. If you want to take that shot against this lousy version of the Yanks, by all means, go ahead. On the other side, Montas, he's 89 on FanDuel and only drawing 6.6% ownership. So that's a little cheap, a little bit low owned for that price for this pitcher. 9,700, 14.6, I think is around appropriate on both sides of it for him against them on DK. So take what you get of Montas, but I don't love it. I'm not the biggest Frankie Montas fan in the world.
I'm not a huge fan of anybody in this area, but like I have Montas and Syndergaard projected for the exact same amount of fantasy points. Syndergaard 5% owned, Montas 15, and Syndergaard obviously a much better matchup against the Nats. I'd be more likely to get there, but I'm not even getting to Syndergaard. So if I'm not getting to Syndergaard at 9,900 with that projection, I'm certainly not getting to Montas when we tack on another 10 in a much worse matchup, in a much worse park, at least for power. Maybe not much worse, but comparable park for power. So I'm going to go ahead and skip it.
About a point and change ahead of Montas. Same story. He's 79. He's 1,000 less on FanDuel. So that's going to be a more interesting spot for me on FanDuel. I haven't seen his ownership there. We'll get to that when we get there.
From a bats perspective, it's sort of the same situation in that, like, would I want to get Yankees and Rays on a normal day? Sure. But at the same time, they are facing two guys. Like, I might not like Montas and Rasmussen from a DFS perspective, but they're good pitchers. I don't like targeting against them on a 12-game slate. So while I do have a little bit of Yankees because they're only 2.8% owned, and I do have a bit of the Rays because they're only 0.8% owned, I have 6% of each of those teams, which is a nice little chunk for the day, but it's also not like an aggressive, huge priority for me either. Do you like either one of these stacks at basically no ownership?
So there's a gigantic wrinkle on FanDuel. Wander Franco is supposed to come off the IL tonight, and they have Wander Franco listed for 300. So that's a massive
dollars.
300, yes, as in 3,400 less expensive than Yandy Diaz, who's sitting first in that lineup. So obviously, if you're playing on FanDuel, Wander Franco goes in your lineups. If you're playing cash on FanDuel and you don't play him, jump into the river and don't come out. So that completely changes the face of what that stack looks like on FanDuel. I do think you can go there. I think it's probably pretty imperative that you do go there. This is all contingent on him actually coming off the IL and being in the lineup, of course, but that makes it a much different spot. When you're dealing with Wander Franco at 4,600, 4,800 for Yandy Diaz, Randy Arozarena at 5,900 on DK, Brandon Lau at 4,200 will probably be pretty popular at that price. I can see not really caring that much about it on DK, but it is going to be an interesting spot on FanDuel if he's in the lineup at 300. I also hear that somebody in the Discord mentioned that it's also the day of the live final on FanDuel. So that's an interesting spot for the live final, if that's the case.
Wait, today is the live final?
Somebody said that. I don't know at all if that's the case. I'm going by what somebody in Discord said, and that would be hilarious if it is. Somebody in chat.
I don't know why they'd be running it on a Friday.
That is a fair point. Yeah, that would be a little bit weird.
Unless they were just trying to.
It's probably the last good full baseball slate, 12 gamer. Like, what's Saturday, Sunday's baseball slate? They're not going to do it on Sunday, and Saturday's probably broken in half. So this is probably they wanted to get it on a solid 12 gamer.
No, they've got yesterday or tomorrow. Unquestionably, would have been good. Honestly, Sunday would be great if it were like a holiday weekend for like a day slate. But no, tomorrow makes way more sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
Either way,
again, that's just going by what somebody said in Discord.
Yeah, I have no idea. So if it is, enjoy it, people.
Kaiser said it.
No real cash options in this one. Judge is 8% owned on DraftKings. Everybody else is unowned. You're just going to get to other places. So I'm going to keep it rolling. Phillies and Nats, 4.7 run implied total for the Phils, 3.3 for the Nats. Noah Syndergaard, as we mentioned, going here. Pat Corbin on the other side. Syndergaard barely owned, 8% owned though on FanDuel, 7,900. I think that looks solid. Corbin not owned on DK, shouldn't be. I'm not going to advocate for either pitcher. I sort of gave my thoughts on Syndergaard already, but 7,900 on FanDuel is at least a slightly different question.
Yeah, I think what you're going to get from Syndergaard here is the potential to pitch through the game pretty cleanly. We know the strikeout upside is somewhat limited. He's 17.5% for the year over 115 innings, but it's just a good matchup, fair price for a talented pitcher, a guy who tends to not get lit up, keeps the ball in the yard fairly reliably. So I think I'll have some shares of him. It'll all be tempered by just, how much I get from these other guys with actual upside. He'll be filler in a lot of spots. If I need to drop down to a cheaper pitcher, especially on FanDuel, that's probably my spot. I like him better than Clevenger for 73 against the Dodgers. So it's probably my cheap guy on the FanDuel site.
Okay. From a bats perspective, we definitely have to talk here. Phillies are 5th in top stack. I actually have them 3rd with a slightly lower top stack odds, so that's funny. They are 2nd in ownership at 10%. Obviously, facing Pat Corbin makes it a little bit interesting for righty power in Philly, 111 park factor via StatCast. That said, I think these guys are a bit over-owned. I understand why they're getting ownership. Someone like Rhys Hoskins is going to look good in cash situations. I will likely be a bit lighter on the Phillies in large field GPPs.
Yeah, probably same here, especially on FanDuel. On DK, it's at least manageable ownership. You get like Alec Bohm hitting 3rd at 8.4%, even Harper only around 12 because he's a little bit expensive. On the FanDuel slate, those guys are all really cheap. They're pushing ownership into the mid-20s for the stars. You get Bohm over 10%. You get Realmuto at 13.8. They're just even more popular, even more difficult to work with. They're going to come up a lot in optimizers because they're going to project great and they're affordable as a stack. So definitely watch what you're doing ownership-wise. But I agree, it's difficult to work with that level of ownership, especially on a 12-game slate. There's just a lot of different spots we're going to want to go. They do look spectacular. Corbin for this season, 3.96% home run rate is down from the 4.93 from last year, but his hard hit rate went up from 40.7% to 45%. The barrels went up from 9.2 to 10.6. So he's arguably been a little bit better in some ways, but some of that is due to happenstance and balls that maybe just didn't get out for other reasons, maybe a little defense. He is a bad and targetable pitcher at this point. So throw Phillies bats at him. Just be concerned about the ownership. Be wary of what you're putting them together with.
What about Nats bats? They are 3rd in our top value metric on DraftKings. Probably showing up a little bit over-owned. I'll find value elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't really need to tackle Thor for his career. He's just been very good at limiting home run upside and keeping the ball in the park. And there's just not a lot of bats I like to go to on that team, even when they're cheap, even when they're low owned, and they're getting, like you said, a little bit of popularity. It's enough to keep me away. It would be the 2-3% that I would want to get to. I'll get value elsewhere, like you said.
And for the record, I am not getting anything from this game from a cash perspective. So that's it for me.
Yeah, I don't.
This one's easy to talk about. The most I have of anybody is 2.7% of Noah Syndergaard. So that's pitchers, hitters, everything. So I just don't have this game right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be, if he's 5.6 on DK, if you double, triple that up, it's easy enough on the DK slate. And then 7% I don't know if I want to be 15%, but if I'm like 10, 12-ish, 10-ish is probably more comfy. So maybe I'm like around the field on the FanDuel slate, but I do think you can go a little bit over on DK and be fine.
Okay. Orioles and Red Sox, 4.4 run implied total for the O's, 4.1 for the Red Sox. Austin Voth and Brian Bayo, I'm so tired of rostering him. 5,700 for Voth, unowned. 7K for Bayo, unowned. And surprise, surprise, I've got about 10% of Bayo at this mark because it's a decent strikeout matchup outside of Mullins and Rutschman and Santander to a degree. The rest of the lineup, decent for a strikeout matchup here. And he's 7K. And I'm more than willing to take shots on 7K pitchers that I think are more talented than their price tag. That's what I'm going to do here with a little bit of Bayo, particularly in this park.
Yeah, you definitely get a little bit of advantage from the park these days with the changes that they've made, especially against right-handed bats. They will have several switch hitters at the top of the lineup, a handful of lefties to throw at him now. So there is that, but yeah, I agree. At 7,000, it's easy enough, especially when he's going 0.5% owned. Like you don't need to make that big of an investment to get well beyond the field. And if he pays off, you're sitting fairly pretty with that discount that he gives you in the bats that you'll be able to buy with it or the pitching upgrade in the SP1 spot. At some point, this kid is going to have to really show it to us on the major league level. I know he's had a couple spots, but 19.3% for the strikeout rate, 10.7% for the walk rate, 1.81 whip over 32 innings. A little bit concerning there. A 40.8% hard hard hit. He's been very good at keeping it in the yard so far, 5.8% barrel rate, only a 1.8 degree average launch angle. And that's who he is. He's essentially like a Framber Valdez. Adam was saying it on the show the other day at the same time as I was typing it in the chat. He's essentially got the potential to be like a Framber Valdez with more strikeouts. Right now, he's like Framber Valdez with around the same strikeouts and way more walks and a problem putting guys on base. So I'm a little concerned, but I would probably go both sides on it. If for every share of Bayo I'm getting to, I might drop an Orioles stack in there, or somewhat similar to that approach, because I do think there's upside for them, and they're fairly cheap and easy to get to.
13th in ownership for the Orioles right now, 11th in ownership for the Red Sox. They did end up showing up 8th in our top stack tool. I just don't have a ton of this from an offense perspective. We have Devers projected for 9% ownership on DK. That is the highest mark of either set of hitters, Orioles or Red Sox. Mullins and Devers are the only guys in double digits on the FanDuel side. Is there anything here for you for stacks, or is this just filler?
I would target a little bit on the Orioles side of things, and whatever I get from the Red Sox, I'll take, but it's not a stack I think I'm going to go out of my way for, really. They're a little bit priced up in terms of the FanDuel pricing, like in the high threes. Saying that Bogarts and Devers are priced up at 37 and 39 respectively is wrong, but that's a more expensive, just relative overall top end of the lineup than some of these other ones that we've seen. And the ownership is around where it should be. You could say Pham and Verdugo up top are a little bit low owned. So I'll take it where I get it. I won't go out of my way to take the Red Sox out, but I don't think they're going to be a prime target for me. I do think that the Orioles have some interesting upside, though, with the power, with the lefties that they'll be able to throw at this kid. If he's putting guys on base, if he's not finding that ground ball, if he's not finding that strikeout stuff, I think there's some upside, some reason to believe that the O's can string together some sequencing against him and create some runs here. So it'll basically come down to the stack will pay off whether they can find the power or not. And that's what he's good at preventing. So.
Anything else here for you?
No, we can move on from that one.
Schedule for the rest of the day, folks. Pretty easy. Coming up after this one, NFL on the contrary. The boss man's going to be on that one. So make sure you're tuning in. 4 p.m. has the No House Advantage NFL show. And then at 6 p.m., we've got MLB live before lock. So 3 live shows for you today. Plenty of pre-recorded content. So keep your eyes peeled for that. MLB Top Stacks tool, free today. And for the rest of week 1, our new NFL lineup generator is free. Highly recommend you guys check that out, especially if you're playing a small amount of lineups in a given week. Really cool tool, brand new for this season, and will cost you nothing through this Sunday. So go check it out.
Not bad.
Rangers and Blue Jays, 3.6 run implied total for Texas, 4.4 for the Jays. Dane Dunning and Ross Stripling. Dunning 6,100 and actually getting some ownership here at 10% as a potential pay down option. I don't have him. Ross Stripling 8,200, basically unowned. I got a little bit more Stripling. I don't have much of an issue getting to Dunning or anything, but I don't really love targeting a bad strikeout matchup Blue Jays team. So what I would like to do is have 0 of Dunning, and if I get Stripling, fine. I don't really need him either.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. The Blue Jays against right-handed pitching this year, 19.2% strikeout rate is second best in baseball for the active roster. There's not a ton of upside on the table for Dunning. He is a pitcher that I do think is a serviceable play at this price in just a different spot, right? If he had a little bit more strikeout upside available for him at 6,100, I think he's a very capable young pitcher who can pitch through a game fairly cleanly, keep the ball on the ground, and find a few strikeouts. We've seen him do it a couple times this year, but just I don't like tangling with this Blue Jays team. So especially at that ownership at 61 on DK, I'm fine with leaving him for other people to take. 7,200 on FanDuel. Maybe he's in that conversation for a discount pitcher, but he doesn't project like it. And again, just going up against this Blue Jays is not a ton of upside. Stripling on the other side, taking on the Rangers. It's a spot you can take some shots at. He's fairly priced. He's low owned, 22% strikeout rate for the season, 3.55 xFIP. He's sitting right in that nice, league average-ish kind of a pitcher, slightly above 11.2% swinging strike rate is nice, a 1.04 whip, 4.4% walk rate. So he doesn't get himself in trouble like ever. So if you're looking for just kind of a safe spot where you can get a guy who might be able to cruise through solid handful of innings, find a few strikeouts against this Rangers team, I think Stripling's got some upside at that ownership and a fair price.
I got the 9%, so I'm willing to take the shot. Nothing too crazy here. I'm a little surprised that I didn't get to the Blue Jays. They are 8th in our top stack odds, 5.5%, 16th in ownership at just 2%. I have the Dunning ownership on the opposite side, and I tend to get to the Blue Jays a lot, but I did not here. Just a 4.4 run implied total for Toronto is also interesting to me in this spot. Respect for Dunning, clearly, like he's a better than average pitcher, just not to me a great DFS style pitcher. I expected a bigger total for the Blue Jays, and that I think that's what's slowing me down. So I'm light on Toronto, even though they do look like a positive leverage spot. For Texas, I don't have them, and I don't anticipate having them 20th in our top stack tool.
Yeah, I probably won't get to too much Texas, but we'll see. You know, the top end with where Semien and Seager are priced up now, they were when they were cheaper, coming up a decent amount of the time for me naturally. Now with that top end priced up, I haven't been getting to them too much, so probably going to continue that trend. On the other side, the Blue Jays, it's a team I get to all the time, like you just said. So I'll be curious. I haven't run any lineups yet, but when they come through, the top end is fairly priced, if not a little bit cheap. Like $4,000 for Vladdy on FanDuel is a pretty nice price. 5,700 on DK is appropriate, but he's not getting that much more ownership on the FanDuel slate. 7%, that's workable. Everybody else 5% or below. It's very easy to put together, and you get some nice prices on the back end of the lineup here. Guys like, you know, Lourdes Gurriel, 4,300 on DK, 2,500 on FanDuel, not drawing any attention. He's hitting 291, 343, 400 this year, creating runs 14% better than average. He hasn't flashed the power, but I mean, last year he had 21 home runs and 541 plate appearances. This year it's only 5 in 493. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I think the potential for some upside is still there for sure. 45.3% hard hit rate. It just looks like he's not getting the launch angle, only a 3.8% barrel rate. So he's a guy who puts the ball in play a ton, hits it hard. I'm happy to have Lourdes Gurriel in my lineup. So you can string together bats from the Blue Jays all day. If they're under owned, I'll take it aggressively if I can get there.
Anything from the Rangers?
Just in spots. Like if they come up, I won't necessarily go searching for them and trying to take them out, but I just don't expect that they'll come up that much with the way that the top end is priced and the bottom end just doesn't project that well for me.
All righty. Game 5, Royals and Tigers. Now we could talk about good. I'm just kidding. I don't really like this game either. Daniel Lynch going for Kansas City. Joey Wentz going for the Tigers. Lynch, 6K. 13% owned. He's sort of the other Dane Dunning if you're looking for pay down options on DraftKings today. I similarly don't have much of Daniel Lynch either. I rarely do. Wentz on the other side, not owned at 5K. These are great strikeout matchups for both sides of this one, but Daniel Lynch projects with a 19% K rate via steamer, so that's rarely going to get him into things that I need. Wentz not too far ahead and I don't anticipate Wentz going very deep in this game. So to me, this feels like a wasted strikeout matchup on both sides. I don't mind getting to Lynch because the price works. He is a starter and it's the Tigers on the opposite end, but I don't think I need to pay down like that today for pitching. I only have 5% Lynch. So I'm going to just go ahead and say I'm not all that interested in pitching. Do you see anything here?
No, not really. If anything, I'd probably be more on the other side. I'd probably be inclined to look at some of the bats, but the bats are all drawing ownership because of these pitchers. So it's probably a no-go for me, just kind of across the board. I'll take a few shares of the bats, but I'd probably be under the field. Lynch projects better than Wentz, but I don't see that much for either of them. He's like the top guy of the bottom third of projections for pitchers for me today. And I don't think we need to go to that level. And honestly, if I'm paying down like that, I would just rather go to, like a Dunning or like a Dylan Bundy, maybe even a terrible strikeout matchup against Cleveland. For one, the Tigers are a little bit better against left-handed pitching in terms of avoiding the strikeout. That 21.6% strikeout rate is 14th in baseball. They're really, really bad at striking out against righties, but that's not great, but they're a little bit better against lefties. And Lynch is I like going to at least reasonably good pitchers, guys who have a discernible skill like Dunning, where he keeps the ball down pretty well. Lynch just gives up fly balls, gives up some home runs, gives up a ton of hard contact. 20.6% strikeout rate isn't something like you want to aggressively chase. A 4.47 xFIP, a 1.54 whip with a 9.4% walk rate. That just looks like a guy who's going to get in trouble even against a bad lineup here. So I don't need him.
Third in ownership and fourth in ownership here on DraftKings, separated by 0.1 of a percentage point. Tigers and Royals are basically the same. They're 9th and 10th in top stack. Royals a little bit harder to get to because they actually do have guys with a pulse. Melendez, Witt, Perez, all priced like they should be. Two of those guys have MPEs. I got a little bit of the Royals, but I'm under the field on both of these teams. They're getting owned for reasons that I don't necessarily feel like I need today. I like Kansas City a little bit more just because I like the bats at the top. But to me, this is ownership I don't want to chase.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree that Kansas City is the better side of it. That's the side I expect to have to, maybe look at and pay attention to while I'm doing my lineup sort. There are some bats like the bottom half of the lineup is completely unowned on the FanDuel slate. And starting even with the cleanup hitter, Hunter Dozier, he's 5.8%. So from him down, you can get to some decent, to some low owned spots. Let's put it that way. And they're cheap. Nick Prado is a bat I'd be very interested in, even with the lefty, and Brent Rooker would be the other guy. Drew Waters, Nicky Lopez, Michael A. Taylor. There's not a ton to love in those guys. Like you said, the top of the lineup is really where I want to live if I'm going to the Royals, and that's where all the ownership is falling. So I'll be below the field there, but MJ Melendez, Bobby Witt, Sal Perez, if I can figure out how to get those guys into my lineup, it's a good spot for them. On the other side, some shots with like Eric Haas, Javi Baez, Harold Castro, Spencer Torkelson, guys like that in the middle of the lineup, Riley Green from the top of the lineup, but it's not a spot I love. Typically, this is a spot where I'm going to kind of consider it like a Coors game, and kind of like the Coors game we've got today, where when you get two bad teams at Coors, I'm not necessarily rushing there when all the field is going there just because it's a Coors slate. If it's two bad baseball teams, it's still two bad baseball teams regardless. So if they get overowned in a situation like this, where they're just getting attention because of the bad pitch, this could easily be a 5-4 ball game, a 6-4 ball game where there's no home runs hit and there's not a ton of DFS upside, and they just get to the bad pitching, but it's not a huge spot. That's kind of how I see it. So the field can kind of have it.
When I ran my no randomness crunch, Bobby Witt showed up in 24% of lineups. No one else from this game. Eric Haas got to 21. No one else from this game cracked 10%. So maybe you can sneak one of those guys into a cash lineup depending on what your build looks like, but I don't see a ton of priorities there on the DK side.
Yeah, Haas in the spot as if he's hitting cleanup 3,200 as a catcher on the DK slate. That makes a ton of sense to me. He's 16.1% as a cash spot. That makes sense. I don't know if there's we'll go through these other games. I don't know if there's a $2,000 catcher lurking out there that I'm not thinking of, but that looks like a somewhat appealing spot. Just a guy with monster power upside against the lefties. So that makes sense.
Only other I got Coors for catchers, so we'll get there.
Oh, right, Coors. Right. Always Coors.
Brewers and Reds, Jason Alexander and Nick Lodolo. No one going to George Costanza in this one, but Nick Lodolo pulling a little bit of ownership. 8,600 up against the Brewers, no less. 22% owned on DK, 5% owned on FanDuel at 9,700. I'm actually still getting to some Lodolo. The strikeout stuff plays here. I think it's a decent strikeout matchup. Don't necessarily love the park from a power perspective. He's probably a little over-owned based on our top pitchers tool, but that works for me to a degree. I have 15%. We got him projected for 21.6. I like Lodolo just because of that strikeout upside.
Agreed. Yeah, I like him a lot. And I tell you what, it's one of those situations where I like him better at the higher FanDuel price because it's keeping the public away. And I think I can pay that 9,700 price tag without too much of a problem on the FanDuel slate today, based on based on a $300 Wander Franco for one and a bunch of other things. There's just a lot of ways to make that work today. 5.2% for a kid with a 28.3% strikeout rate. I'll play that ownership all day. And he's going up against a matchup. The Brewers this year, 25.6% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching. That's 29th in baseball against lefties. So that is an excellent strikeout spot for this kid. He puts too many guys on base, still a 9.3% walk rate, a 1.37 whip, but he hasn't gotten himself in a ton of trouble. 2.49% home run rate, a 3.72 xFIP, 3.95 ERA. Those are basically right on point. Generates nice amount of swinging strikes. I think it's a great spot for Lodolo. I need no shares of Jason Alexander on the other side.
Yeah, neither do I. Neither do I. I don't really have much from the bat side. Neither does the public. 20th in ownership for the Brewers, 1.5%. The Reds getting a little bit of love. They're just sort of the Royals or the Tigers. Well, the Tigers in this case. Value option, second in value. 3.7% ownership for the Reds. That's exactly where I have them. So nothing to write home about. Most of that ownership is going to Jake Fraley. He's 13% owned on DK. The next highest owned hitter on the Brewers or the Reds is 3.7% owned TJ Friedel.
I always say Friedel, but it could easily be Friedel. I'm not really sure. I don't think I've ever
it doesn't
heard
matter.
a broadcast say it.
That would require me to watch a Reds game.
Exactly.
I don't even watch teams I actually think are good. So What will I have a bit of this game? Yeah, I have about 7% of the hitters, but nothing in terms of anything major.
I think if you get Mike Brasso, especially in my projected lineup here that I'm working with, he's hitting leadoff and he's the dead minimum on the FanDuel slate.
2,500 on DK too.
Yeah. So that's a good spot for a guy who's just been a platoon power bat his entire career, going up against a kid. Like I said, Lodolo hasn't allowed a tremendously high hard hit rate. It's 38%, 8% barrel rate, 2.49% home run rate. But Brasso's a guy at that price that could certainly turn on one here. And they're fairly priced on FanDuel, like Willy Adames, 3,200, Christian Yelich, 33, Hunter Renfroe, 35. That's a spot. They're all fairly owned or low owned rather. I think I can take some shots on the Brewers, especially if I'm getting overextended to Lodolo. I might want to back that up with a little bit of insurance because there are some nice power bats in that lineup that do get to lefties sometimes, more in a historical sense than they have this year.
Brousseau actually showed up for me in 12% of my lineups, but he's making up sort of all of the exposure that's coming in here. He's got the MPE as well on DK, so even more interesting at 2,500 if he's leading off. And that'll be on the opposite side of that Lodolo ownership. Anything else here?
No, I think you hit all the Reds bats I would be interested in. Maybe I would throw Aristides Aquino into the mix, depending on where he's hitting. 2,400. He always gets a decent amount of power upside for me, but only 7 home runs, 199, 237, 348 on the season, creating runs 45% worse than average. I would not blame anybody for skipping him, even at the dead min on DK.
All righty, let's talk a little bit about PrizePicks, presenting sponsor of this show. If you click the link in the description of this video, you can get up to $100 on your first deposit. It's a pretty decent deal. If you have $100, put it in. If you don't, go ask somebody and borrow it to get to 100, because free money is going to be the best thing that you're going to find in the industry. You don't have to worry about optimizers in this one. This is just going to be you making parlay cards of over-unders, plenty of different sports. Lacrosse is on there right now, if that's your bag. So I'm going to hit Terry with a couple pitcher fantasy scores right up his alley, too, with the FanDuel scoring.
Perfect.
Let's look at my boy, Brian Bayo, 20.5.
20.5? Oh, I got him over.
So do I. I got him at 24.5. So that one looks pretty interesting to me.
25.6 for me. So
I like it.
Right on.
I like it. Frankie Montas, the line at PrizePicks, 31.5.
I've got him 27.59. So I've got him under.
Okay. And then final one for you guys here. Let's go Noah Syndergaard, 29.5.
That's I got him at 29.24. So that is right on point. Like I said, slightly ahead of Frankie Montas. Those two guys right together in my on my list here.
28.7 for me. So anything inside of a 1 fantasy point is I'm going to just stay away. Guys, link is in the description. You don't even need the promo code anymore. Just click that, sign up at PrizePicks, get yourself $100 on your deposit if you also put in $100. Astros and Angels, 4.9 run implied total for the Stros, 3.3 for the Angels. Lance McCullers and Michael Lorenzen. Lorenzen unowned and should be. Oh my God, I can't even talk. McCullers, on the other hand, 9K, 31% owned, one of the 3 most owned pitchers on the slate. We've got Robbie Ray, McCullers, and Giolito, all basically owned the same today. I have no problem getting to McCullers here. It's a great strikeout matchup against the Angels. It usually is. 31% might be a little high for me, but I think he's very warranted with ownership.
Yeah, it's a monster strikeout upside spot. It's Lance McCullers, a good strikeout pitcher historically. This year, strikeout stuff hasn't totally come back yet. 21.3% over his 21 2/3. Also walking 14.9%, 1.52 whip. Those last 2 marks are kind of who McCullers is, even in a very good year, over 162 1/3 last year. It was a 27% strikeout rate, but you were still dealing with an 11.1% walk rate. The issue is if he's giving those free passes and not finding the strikeouts, he will potentially get himself in some trouble. I just don't think there's all that much to worry about if you get past Trout and Ohtani a few times in this Angels lineup. Plenty of strikeouts there. So I think it's totally warranted for the popularity. 8,800 on FanDuel, $9,000 on DK. You can go there easily. I'll probably be out of the top guys. He'd probably be the guy that I would let the field have a little bit more and maybe take shots with the other guys. But I think there's plenty of upside for McCullers here. Lorenzen on the other side, I totally agree. No need to go there.
I have no interest in Angels bats either, other than obviously if Trout or Ohtani show up in lineups, you don't freak out.
Yeah, Trout and Ohtani, take them as one-offs, take them as a pairing. If you're going to like a four-man, Taylor Ward, Mike Ford, Luis Rengifo, maybe. That's about it in that lineup. Maybe if you're crazy on DK for Max Stassi, a catcher if you need a catcher. But not a good lineup, not a lot of bats there.
I'm happy to get some Astros here. Fourth in top stack, eighth in ownership. I have about 8%. That is 3% higher than the 5% we're projecting. I like the implied total. I like the matchup against Lorenzen, who doesn't miss a ton of bats. And I think the Astros are just simply good.
Yeah, excellent baseball team. Happy to go there. They're on that list of teams that I always make a point to go to when they're under owned. They're maybe fairly owned, but a lot of that on FanDuel is just Kyle Tucker and Jordan Alvarez. Everybody else is in the single digits. Alvarez 25.4%, Kyle Tucker 18.2. On DK, Alvarez 13.8. Everybody else single digits. So it's easy enough to get there in terms of the ownership. The prices are all appropriate for who these hitters are. It's a spectacular lineup from top to bottom. I wouldn't skip on Trey Mancini, Chas McCormick hitting 7th and 8th. Julie Gurriel hitting 6th. There's just 1 through 8 at least you can stack up and down. And then on DK, you can throw in Martin Maldonado where you need him as a catcher.
Yeah, I got to basically everybody here. The only guy that I didn't get over the field on was Jordan Alvarez, and that's because the field is already at 16% on DK, 26% on FanDuel. I'm still getting there, obviously, but I didn't get over that mark. But I basically have 8% of everyone in the Astros lineup, and I will never feel bad about that.
Yep, easy. Yep. Definitely a good spot to go to. And I'm surprised they're not more popular, honestly, against a pitcher who gives up a ton of contact and is easy to get to.
I think this might be the easiest game we'll talk about. Twins and Guardians. I got it at 3.8 runs on both sides, but it's Dylan Bundy and Cal Quantrill. Bundy 6,200, so at least he's priced appropriately. Unowned, don't really think you should have him. Quantrill is 8,400, unowned. I think I would rather have Dylan Bundy, but I don't have either one of these guys.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of need to go to either one of these guys. I know I threw Dylan Bundy into the mix before when I was just saying I'd rather have him than whoever the hell we were talking about, but it's not really a need. 6,200, there's not a ton of upside. 16.9% strikeouts, a 4.53 xFIP. There's too many other good pitchers on the slate, and going up against a brutal matchup for strikeouts. Zero upside for Dylan Bundy today. So cue the 12 strikeout start for him now that I said that. Cal Quantrill on the other side, not all that much upside from, in basically any matchup. So this is more a bat spot, I think.
Speaking of bats, 1.9% owned Twins, 2.1% owned Guardians, both middle of the pack. Highest either one of these teams got to was 12th in our top stack tool. The highest owned hitter on DraftKings is 5% owned Jose Ramirez. I don't have 5% aggregate between both of these teams. This game is essentially, it just doesn't exist to me.
Okay. I think you can go to the bats maybe a little bit more, particularly everybody's so cheap. The back end of that Twins lineup, I know we're not talking about the greatest hitters in the world, but like Nick Gordon, Gio Urshela, Gary Sanchez, they're a little bit better than those 21, 22 prices on FanDuel, 28s and 2000s, 2700s on DK. So maybe you can have those guys help pay for some of the other guys. And it's not like the top end is expensive. Carlos Correa, really the only pricey player on the team, but yeah, it's not the greatest lineup in the world. There are some guys, several guys in the lineup with 40 mid 40s hard hit rates and 10% plus barrel rates. So maybe you get there a little bit. But yeah, I wouldn't tell anybody they were making a mistake just leaving this one out. It's the same story on the other side with the Guardians. Ahmed Rosario, Jose Ramirez, maybe some Oscar Gonzalez, Andres Jimenez. That's about it. Josh Naylor is fine going up against a righty if he's sitting there clean up. But yeah, not one I'll get too aggressively.
Now it's 4%. Jose Ramirez is the best I got. And if I can't get more of Jose Ramirez, then it's probably not a great spot.
Yeah.
And then we get Coors. 5.4 run implied total on both sides. German Marquez and Zach Davies. We're not rostering the pitchers. Do you have an alternative stance there?
In this matchup against the Diamondbacks, it wouldn't be the craziest thing at 0.5% ownership to take a few shots with Marquez. I wouldn't tell anybody they're making a mistake. I don't know how much I'll be getting there. He's a pitcher I do like. Talked about him coming into the season. He's pulled his year together a little bit, but it isn't a standout year. It's not even his average kind of season from what he's been over the last few years. So no real need to bang the drum for him here.
All righty. We're clearly talking about bats. The Diamondbacks are tops in top stack, 9%. 15% owned. They're also a good value. On the opposite side, Rockies are third in top stack, 10th in top value, 5th in ownership. much like basically every other time that I have the opportunity to get here, the Rockies to me aren't owned enough, and I'm getting more of the Rockies than I am the Diamondbacks, but I am over the field slightly on both of these teams. I'm just taking in all of the hitting once again. I don't see a way around it. They just look great because they're basically free.
Yeah, I hate these kinds of Coors games. I think I will have to get there. They're appropriately owned. The Rockies, even that side of it, is highly owned on the FanDuel slate. I do agree that's the better spot on DK in terms of the DFS of it. Just nobody going there, and you can go to bats like Brendan Rodgers, CJ Cron, Charlie Blackmon, Randall Grichuk in the middle of that lineup, all single-digit ownership. That's what I'd be targeting from this game. D-back side of it is just a little bit popular for me, but there's obviously tremendous upside, and they've been good in terms of power. 3.23% home run rate against righties is 9th in baseball, a 5th ranked 171 ISO. They just haven't been great for run creation. Dead on 100 WRC plus against right-handed pitching this year.
This is where you're getting your cash options, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Jake McCarthy, 100%. Corbin Carroll, 93%. I've got McMahon in 90%. These guys are just everywhere. Rojas, Bouchard, Walker, Kelly, Marte, Crone, Diaz, all 25% or more. If you're playing cash and you're not getting at least 7 pieces here, or at least 6, if not 7, potentially 8, you just want a lot of this game if you're playing cash games, particularly from the Diamondback side, but either way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Wander Franco. If you're playing on FanDuel, Wander Franco and Coors, and we've probably got a pretty good lineup.
Absolutely. It's hard to talk about now. We've had a couple straight games, of course. They all look great. Colorado's prices starting to come up on DraftKings just because they've been in Coors for a couple days, but the Diamondbacks are not priced appropriately for this, and that is why they're pulling the ownership that they are. But I'd be happy to get even slightly more.
Yeah. A couple of those D-back hitters should probably be 5,000. I'm thinking about Christian Walker, who's 4,500. That's inexplicable. He's got 32 home runs this season, one of the better power hitters in the game this year. So, yeah, a lot of good spots on the Diamondback side, and that ownership will go up actually probably during the day.
This one will be quick. A's and White Sox, James Caprillion and Lucas Giolito. No real ownership coming to Caprillion. Don't really see the spot for him today. Giolito, on the other hand, 33% owned on DraftKings, 18% owned on FanDuel, where he's 8,200. Giolito looks like one of the best options today just because of that price tag. It's a matchup against Oakland, who's not all that great. It's a good strikeout matchup. It's a fantastic park to pitch in terms of like limiting power, no matter what the temperature is. I think Giolito is appropriately owned today, at the very least.
At the very least, yeah. And it arguably under-owned because of who he is and where that price point is. I'll happily get to shares of him against the team that I've just been targeting with the arms all year long. I've just been shooting bullets at the A's, and it's paid off a lot of times this year. 25.3% strikeout rate for Giolito on the season, a 3.68 xFIP, which is actually below his 3.75 from last year when he was a much better pitcher that we would be, frantically rushing to roster in this spot. So I do think there's upside. He's lost a little bit on the swinging strikes. I've talked about it on other shows. So go watch the show from the last time he started to hear a little bit more about that, because we're short on time.
We are, but look, there's not much if you just simply look at the slate, see Oakland A's, White Sox, Giolito, and Giolito's 8,500, you should just know that guy's going to be pulling some ownership and is a good play. It's just, there's not a lot much to add to that.
Yeah.
8,500 makes it easy.
This year, it's a good play. And based on his pedigree, who we know he is or can be, it's an even better play. So it's a great spot. I'll have tons.
I will not have tons of the Oakland bats. I have nothing to say here.
Nope. No need for Oakland bats. If you want to grab a power lefty, so be it, but not for me.
White Sox are 6th in top stack, 6th in ownership. I have about 4%. They're 5% owned. They just look like solid filler. I just don't like getting a lot of hitting in Oakland.
Yeah, I don't love the ballpark. Matchup's fine against Caprillion. Not a ton of upside for him. And there's a lot of good bats in this lineup that are fairly priced, particularly on FanDuel, where you're still getting Eloy Jimenez at 2,700, only 7.5% owned. Andrew Vaughn, 2,600. There's a lot of soft prices in that lineup now. So I think you can get there as much as you want to, up and down. It's just a matter of, how they fit into some other things, how they work positionally. But there's a lot of discounts. Jean Moncada, 2,200 at the top of the lineup. And Elvis Andrus still hitting leadoff at 2,300, and he's been spectacular now that I've just been bad-mouthing him on every single show, but he still sucks. Elvis Andrus is not a good baseball player.
He's not.
Cue another grand slam for Elvis Andrus.
I would like him to go back to the Braves, though, because I hated when he left, but that was a decade ago at this point, so it's not all that bad.
You've got a fairly serviceable shortstop in Dansby Swanson.
Sure do. I forget who else was in it. Was that Salty, too? I think so.
Yeah, I would think that's right around the same time.
Yeah. Was that it might have been the Teixeira trade, I think, actually.
Might have been.
That's how I learned how to spell. I could spell Teixeira so easily now because of that. 3.4 run implied total for the Mariners, 3.6 for the Braves. It's Robbie Ray and Charlie Morton. We quickly ignored a bunch of pitchers earlier. We're going to do the opposite here. I think that we could quickly ignore the stacks. I have no interest in the Mariners or the Braves opposite of Ray or Morton. Do you?
I will definitely take shots with the Braves against Robbie Ray. He's a pitcher that I'll always target to at least some degree, just based on the amount of hard contact he gives up. He's been a little bit better with it this year, 38.5%, 7.6% barrels, still a 3.68% home run rate. Last season, he was 42.9% hard hit, 9.8% barrels, and a 4.27% home run rate. And those numbers are around that and higher in a lot of years of his career. And he's always been a guy who puts a few too many guys on base. So even with the strikeout upside, there's definitely a lot of paths where he's going to go out, strike out 10 of these Braves and pitch a great game tonight. I will have tons of Robbie Ray on the mound, but I think I can take some shots with the Braves all at like 0.5% ownership, except for Acuna and their low ownership helping offset him. I'll take some shots on the Braves power upside there, but tons of Charlie Morton, tons of Robbie Ray, both excellent pitchers in good spots.
Yeah, 10-5 for Robbie Ray on DraftKings, 10-2 for Morton. They're number 1 and number 2 in terms of salary on DraftKings. I have 48% Ray and 22% Morton, so I'm getting there, or in the case of Ray, even getting above on that number. This is just a great set of 2 pitchers for fantasy. Strikeout potential is very high here. Little nervous because I do like the offenses on both sides, but to me, these are 2 of my 3 favorite pitchers on the slate.
Yeah, agreed. They're both right up near the top of my board. So like I said, I'll have tons of them. I'll probably be over on Charlie Morton, even though, like you said, it is a good Mariners lineup on the other side. 20-ish% on FanDuel, Robbie Ray, 30% on DK. I might be slightly under that just to spread around some shares, but I'll be right around that number. And then I'll take some Braves shots and fewer Mariners shots. There might be a sprinkling of them, but not as much upside against Charlie Morton that I can see as with the Braves against Ray.
And finally, we close it out. Padres and Dodgers, 3.7 run implied total for the Pods, 4.7 for the Dodgers. Mike Clevinger and Dustin May. Clevinger not getting any ownership at 8,100. That's what happens when the Dodgers are on the opposite side of you. Dustin May, unowned at 10K. I kind of like the idea of him being like a pay up to be contrarian guy, but I can't really advocate for that either because the Padres are also quite good from an offense perspective. So I'll have a little bit of May, but the 10K price tag is going to keep people away. That's just a lot of salary here.
Yeah, and the 9K price tag on FanDuel is keeping people away. It's the same 0.5% ownership. So I like him even better on the FanDuel side for taking some tournament shots. He's cheaper than some of these other pitchers. So you're actually getting a little bit of a discount from the Charlie Mortons, the Nick Latolos, the Robbie Rays, certainly of the world here to take shots with Dustin May, who is a kid with a 27.3% strikeout rate. Before he got hurt last year, it was only 23 innings, but he was essentially Spencer Strider last year. He had a 37.6% strikeout rate. He was just whiffing the world with this absurd arsenal of pitches that break like 3 feet horizontally. So he is really good. He's basically fully stretched out here. It's just a difficult matchup with the Padres on the other side. A lot of good hitters in that lineup now, but at that ownership and that price, I can take some shots here with Dustin May. Clevinger on the other side, if you take a few darts with him at 73 on FanDuel, 81 on DK, I don't think you're totally crazy, but it's just a very tough matchup against the Dodgers. So similar kind of a story on both sides. I like the May side better.
Do you like the Dodgers bats here? The Padres aren't really projecting much from top stack or ownership, but the Dodgers are second in top stack. I have them 5th. I'm a little bit lighter here. So 4% aggregate ownership on the DK side, a little bit more ownership coming in on FanDuel. Do you like the Dodgers bats against Clev?
They're okay, but I think I'd be under the field. It's a good team, and I always take shares of Dodgers however they come out. It's not somebody I rush to get out of the lineup. I tend to roster the back end of the lineup a lot with Gallo, with Bellinger, with some of those power bats that go under owned from the left side of the plate back there. So it depends on the nature of the lineup when it's released, the final version of this lineup. But I will have Dodgers. I'll probably be a little bit below the field on some of those FanDuel numbers on the star caliber players, and then above on the lower end players with potential tournament winning upside. On the other side, on the Padres side, I think you can take some shots against Dustin May's walk rate and, the lack of overall experience, the lack of being completely stretched out. And it would be with Juan Soto, Manny Machado, Josh Bell, Jake Cronenworth, those type guys.
12 games up, 12 games down. It's another fantastic MLB strategy show in the books. We've got MLB Live Before Lock coming up later tonight, 6 p.m. Terry, I believe that is you.
Yep, I'll be back hosting that one with Gundacker in the analyst chair.
There you go, everybody. Make sure you're watching that. Coming up next, NFL on the contrary. You get the boss man, Alex Baker, talking about Sunday's NFL game. Should be a good one. Make sure you're tuning in. Hit that like button on your way out the door. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. All that good stuff. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you again later. Thanks, PrizePicks. Peace.